So with ESPN changing their draft rankings on Bronny James and pushing him back to 2025, I'm always emphasizing the power dynamics that's going in the media right now, especially with the ever-changing landscape. And you can see it play out no further than this situation, as LeBron James himself is one of these last mega superstar NBA players to enter the league in which the media landscape was transitioning and went from more of a ecosystem-based entity to now on his way out, it's more personality based, and individuals now have the ability to broadcast themselves to millions of people as distribution changed because of the technology, i.e. social media. But once again, right here, we're going to see a very interesting dynamic play out because Ryan Clark, one of the guys from the Pivot podcast, and you guys should definitely check him out. They're killing it. But he had once worked for ESPN and he left them and went out on his own. And as the landscape changed and it's more personality based, ESPN not only had to come back and come to an agreement with him for a rehire, but they also made him the highest paid NFL analyst on the network. But once again, the ecosystem nowadays in the media is more personality based. And Ryan Clark had actually went on the Pivot and brought to light some of the hypocrisies with LeBron James and this whole Bronny James experience. Once again, the media landscape is different nowadays. Entities like ESPN have to go more personality based, especially with guys who can actually bring their own audience. And you can see it play out no further than Pat McCaffrey calling out one of ESPN's top executives live on air and having no repercussions. So when it comes to this circumstance with LeBron James and ESPN, best believe they're in a partnership. But once again, Ryan Clark had just became the highest paid NFL analyst on ESPN. Let's take a look at what he had to say about LeBron James' reaction about ESPN changing their rankings on his son.
To me, it's not about Bronny James, it's about LeBron James. It's about LeBron James, who once tweeted, "My son is better than a lot of these guys I watch on League Pass." It's about LeBron James saying out loud, "I want to play long enough to play with my son," which is.
And it's also about LeBron James even mentioning that he could start for the Lakers at this very moment. I mean, a lot of his teammates might feel a type of way about him saying things like that. But it seems like more than being a Laker, it seems like LeBron's priorities are things outside of the Lakers, like playing with Bronny.
The presumptive way to say, I expect him to be in the NBA. The first person to ever talk about Bronny James in the NBA was LeBron James.
And make no mistake about it, LeBron James, ever since his son went to Sierra Canyon, he has cameras and a whole production kind of crew following him around, and they're kind of creating like this Netflix type of documentary. So all this has already kind of been made in a film format from since he was a freshman at that school. So this is definitely planned. And you add on top of that his relationship with ESPN, now that the media landscape has changed and is more personality based, in order for ESPN to get more access to LeBron, they kind of got to be on his good side. That's why they go on nonstop and promote him throughout their social medias more than most of these teams. But as far as LeBron James, the more successful he is, the more successful ESPN is. That relationship is symbiotic right now.
So you now can't, when the projections aren't what you want, the projections aren't what you thought, you can't now be upset. You can't now go on the defensive. You can't ask people whose jobs it is to project who will be drafted, to project when they'll be drafted, to not include your son if he has played well enough to be there. The problem is this: it wasn't top 10 in 2024. The problem is it wasn't what you'd hoped or what you'd expected. And because of that, you now feel some way where you've gotten defensive. And I do love LeBron James, the father. I do love LeBron James, the family man. But there's also a reason that a kid that's averaging 5 points a game gets highlights on SportsCenter because he has an alley-oop layup. It's because he is Bronny James. It's a reason why a high school kid who's not the top player in the country has a documentary on him. It's because he's Bronny James. And so all of this comes with the territory. I think the weirdest part or saddest part or most ironic part is that when this mock draft came out, it didn't come out as a bad thing. People were celebrating that Bronny James would one day be drafted. It's just that it's not the King James sort of hype, and I believe that that has affected LeBron.
Now that was very well eloquently put by Ryan Clark. And remember, this is the highest paid NFL analyst now at ESPN. And you're seeing in real time the power dynamics shift, because people who work for ESPN cannot talk about LeBron James in a manner like this. But Ryan Clark is very talented, as he eloquently put this in very practical terms. But it wouldn't shock me if LeBron James was made aware of ESPN changing their rankings way ahead of time. The tweet was already planned. And this is sort of like, kind of to soften the blow, to make him look like, the supporting father. That's how deep that ESPN and LeBron James relationship goes. But again, the current media landscape being more personality driven than entity driven is giving Ryan Clark the power to speak like this. But you're going to hear right here from Dan Le Batard, when the landscape was changing and it wasn't more personality driven, how ESPN had people's tongues kind of, on a rope. Guys couldn't really say what they wanted to say, especially pertaining to LeBron James. You guys check it out.
All right, so let me tell you where the backstory is, because I think you guys will find fascinating sort of the corridors of power and how some of this stuff works. So John Skipper, the CEO of Meadowlark, was running ESPN, and I was there. I got suspended for silly things. I put up billboards at LeBron's return to Cleveland saying, "You're welcome, Miami," and I got suspended for that.
Suspended for that?
I got suspended for that. It was a joke. It was funny. It was great. I got suspended for silly things.
So right there, you heard how sensitive ESPN was with people just trolling LeBron James. Just Dan Le Batard putting up a billboard saying "You welcome, Miami" got him a suspension from ESPN. Because remember, they're in a partnership with LeBron James. The ability for ESPN to have access to him is very important, so they got to be on his good side. And that's why you see the overpraising of LeBron. If he wants his son to come up through the rankings, even though he has a bit of a heart condition, he's still projected to be an NBA draft pick, even though he's playing for a USC team who's at the bottom of their conference at the moment. But still, he gets a lot of accolades and praises, more than guys who are top players in his own draft class. But once again, the key takeaway is you're seeing the power dynamic shift within the media landscape of how now it's becoming more personality driven, and the importance to have access to some of these stars. Guys like LeBron James is using that leverage to have ESPN craft his image in a certain way, or just any other business ventures or just ventures for his own children, to craft and promote those things a certain way to please him. And hey, we're getting a front row seat to see this all play out in real time. And the power dynamic that's happening right now with Pat McCaffrey and that ESPN executive, of him just calling him out live on air and getting no repercussions, is only the beginning of this paradigm shift.